Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the Calls, which is episode 21 of season 4 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine one episode at a time. In this video I cover the 4th season episode For the Calls. So For the Calls is the episode in which the Federation is supposed to deliver a bunch, like 13 industrial level replicators to needy Cardassian colonies which are suffering after the Klingon invasion. However, there's high security about because they believe the Maquis might try to hijack this shipment. However, Eddington and Odo bring to Sisko their suspicions that his girlfriend Kasidy Yates is in fact working with the Maquis. They investigate this and discover that she is in fact working with the Maquis, and they want to pull a sting operation to catch her in the act, and Eddington says that he doesn't want to be in charge of that mission, so Sisko agrees to go himself. However, when Sisko's away, he finds that the Maquis never show up to rendezvous with Kasidy Yates, and so he invades her ship, still catching her red-handed and trying to figure out why the Maquis never showed up, and Odo deduces that they did deliver their cargo, which is Sisko. They wanted him away from Deep Space Nine. On Deep Space Nine, Eddington is revealed to be a Maquis infiltrator, and he shoots Major Kira in order to take command of the station, and with that he hijacks the industrial level replicators to the Maquis, and then leaves himself, having outed himself as a Maquis officer. He then calls Sisko to tell him that Starfleet should leave the Maquis alone, and then taunts him that the Federation is just as bad as the Borg. But Sisko dismisses his arguments out of hand, saying none of that matters. All that matters is that you betrayed your oath and you betrayed me, and I will make sure you rot in a jail. So I don't really recall when I first saw this episode. I have a feeling that I missed it the first time it aired, but I can't remember, because I remember seeing bits of it and hearing about, oh, there's this episode where, Kasidy Yates is working with the Maquis, and this is her, I believe, if I'm not too mistaken. I forgot to look this one up, but I think that this is only her 3rd appearance in the show, or 4th. Maybe it was 2 appearances in season 3, or was it just 1? And then Way of the Warrior, and I don't know if we've seen her since. Oh no, there was that one episode where it says the big step, a very big step. I can't remember which, because that was a B plot of something. Was it no, it wasn't Hippocratic. I can't remember what it was. Sort of Kalis? I don't know. I don't remember. But so we had seen her at least 4 times. I believe it's 4 times. I should have looked this up. But anyway, we hadn't seen her all that much. And I heard that, there's an episode where Sisko's girlfriend they think she's working for the Maquis. And I'm like, that sounds dumb. I don't really want to watch that. So I can't remember though when I watched it, if it was because back in the day, they used to show the episode twice a week. Like, they would show it on Monday, and then later for a second time over the weekend, like on Saturday. And so I can't remember if I caught it like the following Saturday, or if I waited like several months, because they kept Deep Space Nine on year long. They would just show every episode twice. And since it's towards the end of the season, this would replay like towards the end of the summer, like right before season 5 started. So I can't remember if I waited that long, or if I don't remember waiting that long. So I feel like it was like only a week, or maybe it was long. I don't know. It was like 30 years ago. I don't remember. But the point is, I do remember finally seeing it, and I was like, okay. I mean, I was kind of wowed by Eddington being the Maquis spy. And, yeah, so I talked about this before in other videos that I had a friend or an acquaintance, someone I used to be chatty with at school, who also watched Star Trek, and he always talked about the scene with Eddington and the speech that he gives, and he 100% agreed with him, and always went on about, yes, the Federation is just as bad as the Borg. And I remember one time I made this like Star Trek role-playing game, and he wanted to be like a Maquis crew member, and he kept like, I kill this Cardassia and I stab him. Like, he was really he was a huge supporter of the Maquis. And at the time, like, I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, oh, okay, like, but in retrospect, nowadays, I totally disagree with him, like, and I wish he was around because I'd really argue with him about that. Nowadays, I think Eddington's speech was a whole big ball of nonsense. And I've talked about in other episodes how the Maquis, I totally disagree with them. Like, it seems like they're just a bunch of self-entitled, I don't know, idiots. I know, they're selfish. And because all they have to do is move to another planet. Instead, they have to become terrorists and try to attack the Cardassians. Just move to another planet. Like, in a post-scarcity society, it's not like they'd be poor refugees. They would have all the resources they need, and they could build the colony just the same as they left it. It might take them a little bit longer, but they could just do it again and be free from, not having to worry about Cardassians attacking them. But no, they're like, I want to stay on my planet, blah, blah, blah. And they get attacked by Cardassians, and they're like, oh, the Cardassians are attacking us. Well, fucking go to another planet then. Instead, they're like, no, I'm not going to go to another planet. I'm going to become a terrorist and start killing people. Fuck them. But sorry. But anyway, so yeah, that's my argument against the Maquis. But as far as what Eddington says, his whole speech about, oh, you're just as bad as the Borg, I see this now as Ira Stephen Bear's sort of, he has always had a very sort of I don't know if what's the right word, very tenuous maybe opinion about Roddenberry's vision of the future. He definitely doesn't believe in it, and he gradually, it never gets too bad. I think Rick Berman, as much as I like to put him down, but I think Rick Berman did keep him in check for the most part. It kept him from sort of really betraying Starfleet as evil, but he introduced things like Section 31 and stuff, so he was trying a little bit to sneak in stuff to say the Federation is not so great after all. And I feel like this speech that Eddington gives is kind of like Ira Stephen Bear critiquing the Federation, and I completely 100% disagree with his critiques. I think his critiques misunderstand how the Federation works and the vision of the Federation. I think he just never got on board with Roddenberry's vision, so never tried to fully understand it and how it worked. Like the whole thing that Eddington says, oh, the only reason you're helping the Cardassians is you hope they one day join the Federation. You're as bad as the Borg. No! The fucking whole point of the Federation is to have a willing alliance of planets that join together in an organization, and they're still self-governing. They still have their own culture. Like Andorians are still Andorians. They have their Andorian culture. Vulcans are still Vulcans. Like they still have their own very unique, specific culture. It's not like they're under Federation rule. In fact, they have their own laws and everything. Like the Federation is just a very loose alliance, but it's for defense benefit. So if one Federation world is attacked and all of Starfleet comes to its defense, and it's a mutual giving alliance to the edict, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Like it's about celebrating diversity and working together. And I know I sound like a Boy Scout at the moment, like a big Federation cheerleader, but I'm totally on board with the concept of the Federation. And I think they were helping the Cardassians because it's the right thing to do, because people are suffering, and they not going to be like, it's kind of like if you've seen Picard season 1, which I don't think is perfect, but one thing I did like is when in that future, the Federation kind of turned a bit sour because it was supposed to be an analogy for what was going on in the US at the time. But people were saying, "Oh, why are you worrying about saving lives of our enemy?" And Picard's like, "Not lives of our enemy, lives." Like, I thought that was a great point, and that's Picard stands for what the Federation in this time period stands for. It stands for helping people because it's the right thing to do, not necessarily because they want the Cardassians to be assimilated into the Federation Borg. That's bullshit. Like, I mean, if the Cardassians want to join the Federation, I'm sure they'd be willing to help them. Because they would enrich the culture of the Federation. The more cultures that join, the more diverse it is, the more they're enriched, the more they can mutually benefit. There's absolutely nothing like the Borg. The Borg assimilate you into their collective, and you lose all sense of individuality. You lose all sense of culture. Federation maintains individuality, maintains and celebrates diversity and culture. It's like the exact opposite of the fucking Borg. I'm sorry, but this fucking speech is a big ball of nonsense. I wish I would, still knew that guy so I could argue with him about it. It's like, oh, it's totally right. No, he's totally wrong. And the Maquis are a bunch of dickheads. And he was like, oh, you just hate the Maquis because they left Paradise. You don't like them because they left the Federation. Actually, no, he doesn't like them because they're a bunch of terrorists that go around inciting war when the Federation is trying to maintain peace, when they're just too selfish to move to another fucking planet. Anyway, sorry. Get a little bit passionate about that. So no, I think Ira Stephen Bear is wrong. I think that speech is just a big ball of nonsense, as I said. Now, since I'm on the topic of the Federation and their post-scarcity society, how come they only gave Bajor 2 industrial-sized replicators? Eddington's like, oh, well, you got to understand that Cardassians have several worlds, several colonies. Bajor's just one world. Yeah, but I thought the Federation had unlimited resources. And a replicator creates unlimited resources. Now, I assume an industrial-sized replicator is like, they never show them, but I picture them as being like gigantic and huge and able to like recreate like vehicles and cars, like industrial size, not just your normal little food replicator that can like create like houses. It's like freaking huge, and it can like supply like food like for not an individual, but for an entire like population. So that's how. But then again, at the end of the episode, they fit them on that tiny Vulcan ship, so maybe they're not as big as I'm imagining them to be. They never actually show them. At least I don't believe they do. I don't remember them showing them. But anyway, yeah, and there's been a lot of other episodes where this came up, where Bajor is like, oh, we don't have enough food to feed everyone, or people are poor or whatever, and I was like, wait a second, I thought the Federation had unlimited resources, and they're helping them rebuild, so... But here's the thing. Gene Roddenberry always avoided the whole... Earth is a paradise and the Federation has unlimited resources and people don't have to work anymore and there's no poverty and they have you don't use money. He avoided dealing with the specifics of that by having them never really go to Earth or stay in one place for very long. Like they were always like traveling to the distant stars of the galaxy and moving from planet to planet every week, and so they never really stood still enough for this to be an issue. And of course with DS9, especially being set around Bajor, which is an impoverished planet that just suffered through a harsh occupation, they had to deal with issues that the post-scarcity society would make null and void, and they didn't want to make them null and void because of plot. Like it would stifle their storytelling in order to have it. So, I mean, even though I pointed out, for the most part, I'm willing to go with that. I'm willing to hand wave it away because I know like they do need to do that in order to create interesting stories, and I want interesting stories. I want suspenseful stories, but you know, the more you think about it, the more you're like, I thought the Federation had unlimited resources. Like, and to be fair, this is not the worst example of that because, however, like the fact that Bajor had 2 industrial-sized replicators does make me think. Some earlier episodes, like when they talk about how they didn't have enough resources, I'm like, why not? He got the gigantic freaking industrial replicators. But anyway, I get they only had 2 for the entire planet, but still, like, really they should have had more than 2. Like, unlimited resource, post-scarcity society. But anyway, yeah, so I think this is the episode when I finally got used to Kasidy Yates. I was never really on board with this character. She felt like a tacked on character, just like Sisko needs a girlfriend, so let's introduce this character. I felt like we never really got a handle on her character. She just seemed like love interest number 1 or love interest number 2. And particularly the episode, and I think I talked about this in my review of The Way of the Warrior, because when she appeared in that episode, maybe that was the second episode she appeared. But anyway, when she appeared in that episode, she felt like she just came out of nowhere, and like all of a sudden she's in a deep relationship with Sisko, where before they just went on a date to see a baseball game. Now all of a sudden they're in like a committed relationship and deeply in love with each other. So that felt very jarring. But more to the point, Penny Johnson's performance in that episode was not good, and I talked about this a lot, how when I was first watching The Way of the Warrior, tons of people I watched it with or people I talked to who saw the episode were like, oh, she's a changeling. And because they were seeing her the way she talked, like, I am fine, that will be good, and it sounds so abnormal and weird. You're like, that's not a real person, that's a changeling. But it turned out it was just bad acting. That being said, though, she's actually a really good actor, and I didn't mention that. Like, if you ever seen her on 24, like, she does a fucking amazing job. But also, more to the point, she does a really, really good job in this episode. So I don't know what happened with The Way of the Warrior. Maybe the dialogue was just too bland, or the director wasn't good, or she didn't have much time to prepare for the character. I'm not sure. But it's totally made up for in this episode. Like, she does a knockout performance. And I mean, Avery Brooks is okay, I guess, but he's still over the top. Why don't you just throw everything away? Let's leave right now. He still needs to freaking tone it down a bit. Almost always. But Penny Johnson was playing it perfectly, like perfect level. And so it was especially, that was a really cool scene. That, the one where right before she left to go on the cargo run to meet the Maquis, Sisko's like, oh, let's go to Ryza. And there was a bit of subtext. Because when I was watching that scene, I was like, surely she must know that he knows. Because he's making it kind of obvious. He is like, and better yet, why don't you just not make your cargo run at all? Like, why would he say that if he didn't know that she was going to meet the Maquis? But later, they do explain this, where Kasidy says that she wasn't sure, but she suspected that he knew. And he said, well, why'd you go anyway? And she's like, well, the Maquis said they were desperate, and there were people dying, and they desperately needed these medical supplies. So I'm willing to buy that. Like, that makes sense if she's saying, she's being told people are going to die if she doesn't go, that she'd be willing to risk, even though, Sisko's acting weird and the possibility he probably knows about her. She's willing to take that risk in order to save lives. Although, when the Defiant decloaks, she does act shocked. She's like, my God. I don't know. But anyway, so that was a really good scene, though. To have the subtext, like the text being totally different than the subtext of, oh, let's go to Ryza, was really the subtext is like, I know you're working for the Maquis, don't leave or I'll have to arrest you. Like, that's, but yeah, she risks it anyway. So that was really good acting. Really, especially by Penny Johnson. And they did portray, it was really touching at the end where she returned, where Sisko let them go to test her to see if she would turn herself in, and she did turn herself in. It was really touching. Also, you had some really nice scenes between Benjamin and Jake, like when Benjamin was freaked out over the fact that when he found out that Kasidy Yates might have been working for the Maquis, and he looks depressed, and Jake tries to cheer him up, but he can't tell him what's bothering him, but he just like reaches out and says, holds his hand, and like, this is what's important. This, no matter what happens, kind of preparing Jake for Kasidy having to leave. Which was, again, a really powerful scene. There's a lot of really good scenes in this episode. And I love how Sisko really had to put on a facade, like pretend that nothing was wrong between him and Kasidy. And there was one scene in particular where you see him preparing himself, like mentally, like he's looking all depressed and upset, but he knows that Kasidy is about to come in the room, so he kind of breathes to prepare himself. And then when Kasidy enters, he's like, she's like, oh, missed me? He's like, were you gone? And he was being playful and joking, and he like instantly moved from being like somber and depressed to playful. And you could tell that he was putting on an act, but he was doing a good job at it because he didn't want her to know anything was wrong. That was good. That was really good storytelling, and I dare I say, good acting on Avery Brooks' part. Dare I say. But anyway, so another thing worth mentioning is Kasidy Yates repeatedly saying that she's going to meet with the Tholians. That's her cover story, that she's delivering medical supplies to the Tholians. So it's yet another mention. There's a ton of them in TNG DS9 Voyager. Mentions just shout outs of the Tholians, but we never actually see them. But she does have this line, which is, a nice little shout out. I wouldn't be surprised if Ronald D. Moore came up with this line where she says, "Oh, I gotta be on time. You know how the Tholians are about their punctuality." Nice little callback, because Spock had a line in Tholian's web when Tholians showed up and started attacking them right when they said they would. It was like, oh, the renowned punctuality of the Tholians or whatever. So that's kind of a sly little Easter egg in there, but yeah, we never see them. Let's talk about Eddington. He was only in 6 episodes before this. It feels like more. Like, it always feels like more. Like, when they have recurring characters, like Ensign Rowe felt like she was in like 15, 20 episodes. She was only in 8. And it felt like Eddington was just a normal cast member. Like, he's always there. But he was only in 6 episodes before this one. The Search Parts 1 and 2, Die as Cast, Adversary, Rejoined, and Our Man Bashir. That's it. And, and then they turned him into a Maquis. Now, it was my guess that they never planned for him to be in the Maquis, and they just, when they were writing this episode, they just decided to throw him in the Maquis. But that's actually not the case, according to Memory Alpha anyway. I was reading some interesting quotes from Ira Steven Behr saying that they decided in the episode The Adversary that he'd be working for the Maquis. So that means when they did Rejoined and Our Man Bashir, they had in mind that he would eventually turn to Maquis. But in both those episodes, he was probably being a surrogate for O'Brien. I mean, O'Brien was in Our Man Bashir, but he was trapped in the hollow suite, so they needed someone on the outside. And Rejoined, like, Colm Meaney had to go off and film something, I think, and so Eddington had to act like an engineer, even though he's a security officer, but whatever. But anyway, so yeah, they said that they originally came up with the idea to turn him into a Maquis traitor during the Adversary, and they said that's why that's why they wrote the scene where Eddington's having that conversation with Sisko and about Sisko's promotion, and Eddington says, like, you don't get to be an admiral in a yellow uniform, and Sisko's like, well, you could always transfer from security to command, and then Eddington's comment is just, oh, well, who would protect the ambassador? Well, Odo, maybe? But anyway, and so apparently, according to Ira Steven Behr, that scene was written to indicate that Eddington knew that he would never be in command, because he knew that he was part of the Maquis, and eventually he would go join the Maquis permanently. So I guess they're saying, at least Ira Steven Behr is saying, that at this stage in the show, Eddington was working for the Maquis. So I talked about before how I feel like he was always portrayed as adversarial. Like in The Search, he was kind of an asshole. Not really an asshole, but he stole Odo's job, and then he was being an asshole in the fake reality. And in the Die as Cast, he's the one who sabotaged the Defiant. So it feels like they always wanted him to be sort of adversarial, and that's the point of it. And it's funny because they stopped making him adversarial in the episode The Adversary. And that's when they decided he was part of the Maquis. So it feels like that's why they decided to end, like, Our Man Bashir Rejoined, he's not adversarial at all. So it seems like they toned it down because they knew that he would eventually defect to the Maquis. But that's just my guessing. It does feel like to me like, they turned him into a totally different character in season 5 when he joined the Maquis. He instantly went from being Eddington to, well, they made him the leader of the Maquis, which seemed really out of place, and so almost seemed like a different character, and they created like this whole feud between Eddington and Sisko that all took place off screen. But I talked about this already in my review for the uniform. Also, another interesting thing about this episode, that originally there was a side plot about the Klingons arming the Maquis, which never happened, but they did mention that in the episode Blaze of Glory, that the Klingons were arming the Maquis, which makes a lot of sense, because the Klingons are fighting Cardassians, Maquis are fighting Cardassians, so that it makes sense that enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yeah, that's the saying. But speaking of the Maquis, I feel like they don't really touch on where they're at the moment. Like, they do touch on a little bit at the start of the episode, say that the Maquis has kind of had a free reign in the demilitarized zone since the Klingons were attacking the Cardassians, and so if they got their hands on the replicators, they might rebuild, in which case they could be a bigger defense to them. But it does make me wonder, like, exactly what's going on, because they just wanted the freedom to run their planets. Like, is their goal to, like, completely take over the Cardassian colonies in the demilitarized zone? Like, I just wish they were more clear about exactly the state of the Maquis. I think they're even less clear in season 5. I think by that time I'm like very confused about what they're fighting for, what the deal with the Maquis is. But anyway, yeah. So that's just something that's always been a bit hazy. I mean, we hadn't actually seen the Maquis on Deep Space Nine since Defiant in season 3. Like, so it's like they mention them a couple times, but they don't really like touch in on them or, expand on what exactly is going on. And I felt like they just brought this up out of nowhere because they wanted to have Eddington defect or whatever. But anyway, we get a side plot with Ziyal meeting Garak, and this is when the very creepy relationship begins. But of course, in this episode, it's just a friendship, which I'm not really opposed to. It actually kind of makes sense. But I was kind of thinking when I was watching this episode, like, I hope they don't turn this romantic. And in season 5, that's exactly what they did, but not before recasting her for a much older actress. And I already went through this, I believe, in my review for Return to Grace, that 3 different actresses portrayed her. One who was 24 years old in Indiscretion and Return to Grace, and another one who was 26 years old, so only 2 years older, in this episode, and she only appeared in this episode. And then the other one who appeared in all of the episodes in season 5 and 6 with Ziyal, who was 34 years old, despite the fact that Ziyal was described as 14 years old in Indiscretion. But so yeah, it was I think they so, I was watching Delta Flyers, and they were asking, like, why did they change actresses so much, and they guessed that it was because of the makeup. But I think at least with the next actress it was more because she was older. That's what I think. I think because they knew they were going to put her in a relationship with Garak, and they wanted to minimize the creep factor, so they just hired an actress who was in their 30s. But that's just my guess. So the actress who played her in this episode was Tracy Minendorf, who I know from Lost. she played Bonnie in the episode Through the Looking Glass, not the Mirror Universe episode, the Lost episode, which was one of the best episodes of the show, the season 3 finale. And of course, she was in the penultimate episode of that season as well. She was one of the others who was down in the Looking Glass station. So I always recognize her from that. She apparently was in Mission Impossible. I think maybe a couple other J.J. Abrams projects. And she's actually my favorite Ziyal. You're going to ask me which one I like the best. I think I like this one the best. I think she's a really good actress, for one. But I just like the way she plays Ziyal better. Kind of wise for her age. Like, she feels like I can buy that she's like hardened from being brought up in a labor camp. Whereas the previous Ziyal, she was too fragile that I just didn't buy that for her. And the next Ziyal is just off. Like, she's okay. Like, I don't hate her, but I like Tracy Minnendorf better. I wish they could have kept her, but maybe it was they wanted to age her up, or maybe she didn't want to do the role anymore because she hated the Cardassian makeup. I don't know, but I wish they could have kept her. So yeah, the side plot in this episode was okay. Like, it's 4B plot. It was not. I didn't find it too distracting from the main plot, which was really powerful. This one was less powerful, but it was still interesting in its way. And I did have some funny scenes with, like, the spring ball, which we finally got to see, and Garak wasn't paying any attention and kept talking about Ziyal, and Bashir finally went on the raid, blah, 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 but then he missed, like, the best play of the game, and Garak was like, you should have been paying attention. Like, that was funny. And the whole scene with Quark, and when Kira comes in and, like, pins him against the wall, and it's like, you better stay away from her. Am I clear? And then Quark, he comes back to Quark. He's like, you told her. And then playing with Garak's mind, it's like, oh, now I know that Ziyal definitely doesn't want to kill me. And Quark's like, well, maybe Kira's just pretending to want to hurt you because she wants you to think that Ziyal doesn't want to kill you or whatever. And I love that Garak was just totally overthinking it. Like, that totally seems like his character. Although I do feel like he would be more wise to this. But I do like how he was, like, really suspicious of her because she's Gul Dukat's daughter, and she even brings up the fact that, I heard that you killed had my grandfather killed, but I don't care, is what she said. And I could kind of relate because when they were talking about the sauna, the Cardassian sauna, that most other races on Deep Space Nine couldn't stand that heat. Only Cardassians would, and that goes on board with. And I feel like maybe Ziyal shouldn't be able to stand it as much as purebred Cardassians because she's only half Cardassian. But I'm not going to try to minimize her for being only half Cardassian like those Vulcans in that Strange New World. Who are actually humans who just turned into Vulcans, but let's not talk about that. But it does seem to me like maybe she shouldn't handle the heat as well. But anyway, because they've been very consistent about the Cardassians, like, living in heat, and they find, like, the station is too cold, and, like, other humanoid species, particularly that of humans, like, it's what their base temperature is too cold for them. And so they have to go into this sauna to really, like, bask in the heat. And I actually relate to that a little bit, if that makes any sense, because I not a fan of the cold, and I live in a house for whatever reason where the air condition is always blasting, and so I'm freezing in the middle of the summer. Sometimes I go outside and sit in the heat, or even sit in the porch, which is even hotter, and I sit in there to defrost because I've been going insane recently about how freaking cold it is in this house, and it drives me insane. But anyway, anyway. It's not my house, so I don't have control of the air conditioning. But yeah, it freaking drives me insane. So that's what I felt. That's what I thought when I was watching this scene. It's like, I can so relate. One time in the middle of the summer, I just went in my car and sat in a hot car don't even turn the air conditioner on. I was like, felt myself defrosting. But anyway, Anyway. So I would now like to thank all of those that support me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with my channel. I want to give a big, huge, gigantic special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse and Jordan Johnson. Thank you so much for your strong support. And I would also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joe Lavals, Alessandro Migalisio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So, we do have some comments on Facebook and Blue Sky. If you want to leave comments for me, even if you're not a patron supporter, you can go to my Facebook or Blue Sky page. Both links for both of those in the description below. You can make a comment that is 50 words or less. So I do have a comment on Facebook that says, I always liked the twist of this character betraying Starfleet. There could have been more hints of this prior, but at the same time, that's what also makes it very good. So Irish Stephen Bear did say, and I forgot to mention this, he said that one of the reasons why I decided to make Eddington a Maquis is because they saw a theory online that Eddington was a changeling, and they decided then when they saw that theory that they're not going to do that. So they purposely wanted to subvert expectations, and they wanted to do something totally unexpected for Eddington, because apparently people were thinking he's a changeling. Which is interesting. It's interesting that they decided to do the exact opposite just because they read something online. Granted, this is, the mid-90s when online wasn't that big of a thing. It wasn't that huge of a community as it is now. But it makes me think of Westworld, how they purposely wrote season 2 to go in the opposite direction of fan theories. And I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I don't think this show, the writers should go out of their way to satisfy fan theories, such as the whole ice dragon bullshit in Game of Thrones. That still pisses me off. But I don't think they should throw away their plans just because some fans figured out what they were going to do. I don't know. I kind of disagree with that. But then again, I'm fine with this Eddington thing, with him being a Maquis rather than changeling. It does make me feel like they changed direction. But as I said, apparently they was thinking of this since The Adversary. And apparently that scene in The Adversary was supposed to be foreshadowing that he was in a Maquis, but I would never pick that. I just learned about that yesterday, after 30 years. So it's not anything I would, and I've seen these episodes tons of times, more times than I'd like to admit. So it's not a very clear. So I kind of agree that they could have done more. More hints, subtle hints. Like you said, they don't want to give it away, but still, it would be interesting if they would do more scenes like that, which you would never pick up in a billion years at the Maquis, but until you see this episode and sees the Maquis and look back on it and go, oh, I get it now. This makes so much sense. But you can't do that with the scene in The Adversary. That's too subtle. You need something a bit more advert. Not so much that you would be able to figure it out, but so much that once you do know, you can go back and watch it and be like, oh, this fits. In fact, I was of the mind that they didn't decide him to become a Maquis until this episode, because I felt like the previous episodes didn't hint at it at all. So if they knew this, according to Ira Stephen Bear, if we take him at his word, then yeah, they should have hinted at it like they did with Seska on Voyager. But anyway, we also have a comment on Blue Sky from someone with the username of Annoying Liberal, which I like that name, who says, why do the Maquis exist in a post-scarcity society? Oh, that's one. Sorry. One, why do Maquis exist in a post-scarcity society? Two, why don't they realize that their planet was given to ensure the peace of billions? Three, why weren't we shown what the Maquis are fighting for? Like we did in TNG. Shouldn't you show and not tell? Four, how do you pronounce the Maquis? Well, okay, so that last question, number 4, I believe is a reference to the fact that some people say Maquis and some people say Maquis. So, I think, for me, this is just my observation, and I could be wrong, but I feel like more people say Maquis than they do Maquis. So that's why I say it that way, because I feel like that's the majority of people. There's just a few. I feel like Chakotay is one of them who says Maquis, but I could be wrong. But I do know some people definitely say Maquis instead of Maquis. But anyway, I'm not familiar with the French language. Maybe someone who speaks French would give us the proper pronunciation. I believe it was named after mountains in France because it was, a real life resistance cell in France during World War II, and they named themselves after the mountains, if I remember correctly. But anyway, as for questions 1 through 3, we are of the same mind. These are the exact questions I would ask. Yeah, why did they exist in a post-scarcity society? Why didn't they realize that their planet was given to ensure peace of billions? Because they're selfish pricks is the only answer I can come up with. And why weren't we shown the Maquis are fighting for like we did in TNG? Shouldn't you show not tell? Is exactly what I was saying earlier. And as I said, I think this problem gets even worse in Season 5. Anyway, let's move on to the patron comments. If you're a patron supporter, you can make much longer comments with a 300-word limit. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into them. First comment is from Kyrie091, who says, "For the cause, more like bore these flaws." I know I'm probably in the minority here, but I actually like Eddington. I like his weird little arc. The only thing I don't like about it is how, in the middle of a much bigger and more important struggle, we suddenly have this weird little Maquis tangent to settle on its own. The Maquis / Eddington arc is interesting, but if you're watching amidst the craziness of the Dominion War and so on, you sort of see the Maquis stuff and you're like, great, this sucks. Now, I think you're more like Gate for Trucks. Or Plate of Fucks. But, to be all nerdy here, it's that not actually the Dominion War, it's the setup to the Dominion War, because the Dominion War doesn't start when the Dominion War starts. Actually, right before it starts, the Maquis are wiped out. Spoilers, which is dumb because you shouldn't be watching this if you don't know that. But it's a 30-year-old show. Come on, I think the spoiler grace period has been over for decades. But anyway, yeah, the whole Yeah, it doesn't actually interfere with the Dominion War. It's side by side with the setup for the Dominion War, which is really the Klingon War. But I get your point nonetheless that it seems to be its own little thing. And because they don't touch on it very often, like I said, it was last time was Defiant, and then this, the only one in season 4 is this, and then we get 2 in season 5, second of which is when they're wiped out. So yeah, it does feel, you feel disconnected from it, and especially the later episodes, you really don't know what's going on. So I get you. Oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention the end of Kyrie091's comment, which says hashtag Eddington Way, or I should say Eddington Way. Anyway, next comment is from Antarius, who says Ziyal is 18 at most, and Garak is at least 40. It may be legal, but it feels more than creepy. The authors try to downplay it by stating that she only seeks friendship, but then the holodeck certainly isn't the right place for their meeting. It's surprising that the Maquis storyline resurfaces here. The whole topic feels rather old, and it's strange they decided to have a discussion whether the Maquis cause is legitimate at this point. In addition to that, we hear a lot of arguments for the Maquis cause, and only counter argument is that they are terrorists, so we don't really have an interesting discussion. The conflict of interest Sisko has to face was the best part of the episode, although I appreciate the unexpected twist in the end. It was a little bit unbelievable since we never saw any hint of Eddington's true loyalties in any previous episode. Because of the B-plot, I can't get this episode a positive rating, so it is a 5 out of 10. Woo! That's harsh. But, I agree that the characters do a piss poor job of giving the counter argument to the Maquis, and I think that was maybe Ira Stephen Bear's bias showing, because I can think of plenty of good counter arguments that they're being selfish pricks, that they don't care about the lives of billions of Federation citizens. They'd rather risk that so they don't have to, so they can be lazy and not move to another planet. They're really selfish. Sorry. Can't help but identify, and they don't make these arguments. You're right, the only argument they bring is, Worf saying they're terrorists, and I like, O'Brien's response is like, I wouldn't say that to Major Kira, but as I was watching that, I thought of a retort Worf could have said. Worf could have said, well, that was different because they were fighting an occupation. Again, this would have gotten more into the differences between the Maquis and the Bajoran terrorists, which they should have done rather than simply explain, they're traitors and terrorists. You can do better than that. I feel like in For the Uniform, it is simply, you betrayed your uniform is the only real argument Sisko gives. Although he does give a little thing at the start, but yeah, about how the colonists are victims of the Maquis. But anyway, certainly in this episode they didn't get into it enough. As far as Garak's age, yeah. To be fair, they don't get romantically involved here, so this isn't the episode that bothers me. It's in season 5 when they show them kissing. That's the real problem, but I think they're trying to do a sleight of hand and be like the Jedi mind trick. They're trying to do a Jedi mind trick when they go like, Ziyal is in her 30s. She is not a teenager. But anyway, let's cast this older actress to wipe your mind and fool you. Trying to do a retcon. Anyway, so next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says this episode opens with Sisko and Kasidy in bed. Those triangle pillows have never looked so awkward or uncomfortable. I really like this episode. It starts a string of bangers that close out season 4, and there have been a lot more terrible episodes in season 4 than I remembered. I like the Maquis using Kasidy as a distraction to steal the replicators, and the ending where Kasidy comes back to the station is a great way to end the episode, even though she says Terminator style, "I'll be back." I thought she was gone to prison for good. They never stay in prison very long in DS9. Speaking of, I never remember which B stories belong to which episode, so I was surprised. This was the Garak, the creep episode. I don't think Garak should have had a love interest. It makes him seem less mysterious. I do like how he thinks Ziyal is trying to kill him, though that might have been a better story if she was. Now, I do disagree with that. I like that she wasn't trying to kill him and that he was just being paranoid and that she just wanted the company of another Cardassian. Now, I think that's fine. I agree, should have never made them a couple. And it does diminish his character to have a love interest. I think he's much better without one, except for Bashir. But anyway, now as far as this episode starting a series of bangers to close out season 4, I personally don't think Body Parts and Broken Link are bangers. It's basically this episode and The Quickening. Those are the only good ones. But that's just my humble opinion. Not that I hate Broken Link. I just don't think I wouldn't go as far to call it a banger. Like, it's fine. And Body Parts, yeah, it's a Ferengi episode, so no, absolutely not. But as far as Kasidy returning being a surprise, 100%. I thought she was gone for good. At the end of this episode, I'm like, oh, they're writing her off the show. But in season 5, she comes back. I was shocked. I was like, holy shit, they actually brought her back. And Iris D. Bear apparently quoted saying that, and I believe maybe it was Ronald D. Moore, actually, not Iris D. Bear. But one of them apparently stated online, she will be back when this episode aired. So I didn't get the message. I didn't have the internet back then. I didn't have the internet until like 99, maybe not even 2000. But anyway, no, it was 99. Anyway, next comment is from Norman Buckwald, who says, "Dismissed, old man." Isn't it ironic that, with the exception of Preemptive Strike, the only good episodes that focus on the Maquis are the DS9 ones? The only time Voyager ever come close took place on a holodeck, and I can't really call that one a Maquis episode as good as it is. For the Cause is riveting and quite interesting, as never mind who is a changeling, but who is a Maquis. And interestingly enough, two characters we have wondered being changelings, Kasidy Yates and Michael Eddington, turn out to be part of the Maquis. Given that, too many fans out there make a big deal about Eddington is right, and the Federation, or at least Starfleet, is like the Borg. Not fully sure of that, but quite compelling an episode it is, and for Sisko. While we're here, and the angst was about Kasidy. Mike, you betrayed your uniform! Will come later. Great stuff. My general nits, however, with the writers is the same. How often is Kira going to either be abducted or duped when years she was supposed to be a great freedom fighter? And how nice of Starfleet providing Cardassian replicators when a year before Kai Wynn was going after Ronan for farming equipment. The Cardassians are not part of the Federation, and as far as I know is not being considered, right? In spite of these nitpicks, I give this episode 9 replicators that should be going to Bajor instead out of 10. Well, pay attention, man. Eddington said at the start of the episode that Cardassians have larger populations because it's multiple worlds that are in need, not just one world. I'm just kidding. Sarcasm, but they did say that. Whether or not you buy that, I guess, is another question. But yes, I agree about your point about the farming equipment. This is what I said. Like, they have unlimited technology. They have replicators that can create anything. Why the fuck do they need farming equipment? But anyway, sorry. It's been complaining about Shakar. Yes. Let's see. I don't know. I think Preemptive Strike was the only really good Maquis episode. This is a good one too, but not as good as Preemptive Strike. The ones in season 5 are mediocre. Defiant was mediocre. I think the 2-part Maquis episode was also mediocre. And as you point out, they're not really any Maquis episodes in Voyager. Like, you could say that bullshit one in season 7, and maybe the holodeck one, as you mentioned. But the rest are kind of just like the Maquis are always there, and it's not really an episode about the Maquis, because the Maquis are just normal characters who are now Starfleet officers and acting like Starfleet officers, and it's not really, I don't know, I just feel like, I remember I said this, I found it weird that the Maquis were created specifically for Voyager, because they always felt more like a Deep Space Nine thing. But anyway, the whole argument of Eddington was right. No, like, absolutely not. I think is totally far off. Now, as far as Kira getting phasered, I don't know. Like, I do buy it. Like, I think I get your point. She is, like, attacked or phasered too easily. Like, I think the biggest issue I had was in the episode Invasive Procedures, when she was attacking, like, that random woman, and that woman managed to beat her up. Come on. She's a freaking freedom fighter. She should have easily got the better of her. And Sisko managed to beat up that Klingon, the Tuvok Klingon. And if you can beat up the Tuvok Klingon, then Kira can definitely beat up that dumb woman. But here, I do buy it, because she was sucker punched or sucker phasered. Like, she had no idea Eddington was part of the Maquis, just calls her in and is like, oh, I'm going to need to take over the station for a while, and just shoots her. Like, what is she supposed to do at that stage? Like, do a fancy flip? I don't know. Like, she didn't see it coming. She was caught by surprise. It was a sucker punch, a low blow from Eddington. Shows how despicable he is. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kinney, who says, what a great episode. I agree with everything Worf said about the Maquis, and usually it's the other way around. Was Garak and Ziyal even a relationship or just a crush? As I don't think they ever kissed. Maybe once they did, and I think it was Ziyal who initiated the kiss. Now, on the traitor Michael Eddington, I liked his character and was shocked when I saw this episode first. I liked the way he used Kasidy Yates' bait. A way better traitor than that bitch from TNG. The best Maquis episode were on Deep Space Nine, so feck off preemptive crap, which was riddled with plot holes. So my rating is 9 for the uniform. Wasn't a great end to the Eddington story. Thank the Badlands we got Blaze of Glory, the episode, and its great song. Also, out of 10. Blaze of Glory was fine. Like, I don't know. I didn't think it was all that great, but I'll get to it when I get to it. I don't know. It felt like it was just like wrapping up old news. You were wrong about Preemptive Strike, as always, but I already knew that. It's the best Maquis episode, and Rolaren's the best Maquis character. There's no plot holes in that episode. But anyway, we've hashed this out, I know, already a whole bunch of times. Yeah, so in this episode, Garak and Ziyal are an item, but in the next time we see him is in the 2-parter in Season 5, and they most definitely are. And yes, they do kiss. I don't remember how many times they kiss, if it was just once or twice. And then, so they're together again, I believe. They're shown together again in the Season 5 finale. I believe they are. It's been so long since I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure they are, and they have a romantic scene there, so I think they might have kissed in that episode too. But then, of course, after that, they're not again because Garak is kicked off the station. And by the time it gets back, Ziyal's dead. So that's why you don't really see them as a couple after that. But I think in those episodes in season 5, they most definitely are a couple. Definitely. I'll have to examine that more when I get to those episodes. Anyway, next comment is from Brandon Nealhouse, who says, there are too many plots in this episode. Kasidy Yates being a Maquis smuggler, Michael Eddington finally defects to the Maquis, Garak and Ziyal forming a friendship of sorts, which always seemed a bit creepy to me because of the age difference, and we finally get to see a game of spring ball. For what it's worth, I think the Maquis have been screwed over shamefully by a bunch of pad pushers. I think Avery Brooks overacts a lot here, and I find it hard to watch. His grudge against Eddington is personal. I thought there weren't meant to be grudges in the Federation paradise. I find it interesting that Kasidy returns to DS9 and surrenders to Sisko. So it is okay to spy on people who aren't part of the Federation. This episode troubles me deeply. 7 freedom fighting terrorists out of 10. So you and I disagree about the Maquis. I'm on the other side. I don't think they were screwed over shamefully by a bunch of pad pushers. I think that Federation did what they did to save lives and to keep the peace and to prevent billions of people from dying in the war. And if it meant that a couple of colonists had to be inconvenienced, they should fucking get over it and move to save lives and stop being such selfish pricks. But just my humble opinion. Yeah, Avery Brooks overacts here a lot. Absolutely, 100%. But I kind of used to it. He does it all the time. There's supposed to be no grudges in the Federation Paradise, but that was when Roddenberry was in control of Star Trek. He's dead now, and so Ira Steven Behr doesn't give a fuck about the Roddenberry box. So there are tons of grudges now. And what else did you say? Too many plots in the episode. Well, here's the thing. So that's what I thought about this episode too. That's why I was never really on board with it at first, because I feel like everyone and most of the comments, and not just here but like online and everywhere, and I was talking to people, focus on Eddington and his betrayal, but that's only revealed in like the last 5 minutes of the episode. The bulk of the episode is about Kasidy Yates, and to me that's not quite as interesting as the Michael Eddington. So I think a lot of people, including myself, had a false image of this episode being about Eddington because this is the episode which we see him defect, but that's not what the episode's about. Now, granted, you could say the bulk of the episode, it's foreshadows Eddington's turn. Like, for example, when he's on a Defiant and O'Brien asks him what he thinks about the Maquis, he's like, I don't have any thoughts, I just do my job, which is actually is full of shit. But it does foreshadow it a bit, but really it's not what it's about. Like, it's just this tiny thing that slipped in there, and then it's revealed at the end. The episode's about Kasidy Yates, and to be fair, I've grown to appreciate that storyline a bit more. As I said, when I first saw it, I didn't care about Kasidy Yates, and I thought she was a nothing character. Now, in retrospect, after seeing where they take her and Benjamin's relationship, I'm a bit more interested in her, and I buy her relationship with Sisko better. But that's a retrospective perspective that maybe, you kind of have to know where it goes next in order to appreciate it, which makes it not as good. But anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for the calls out of 10 is going to be an 8. Extremely good. So I thought about giving this episode a 9 because I do think Eddington's turn is really powerful. And as I said, in retrospect, I like the Sisko and Kasidy Yates, particularly as I said, the final scenes where there was a subtext with him begging her not to go, and then when she returned, and because she loved him and was willing to go to prison for him, it's touching, and the touching scenes with Jake. And I thought the Ziyal and Garak's B plot was fine. I didn't really have an issue with it. I thought it fit in the episode fine, but yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think it's not really what I'd call a 9 or 10 of an episode. It's most of the episode is fine. It's about Sisko suspecting Kasidy's, and it wasn't like great. I don't think it got great until like the last 5 minutes, and I don't think those last 5 minutes were great enough to justify a 9. So close. I'm close to giving it a 9, but not quite. So I'll give it a strong 8 out of 10. So that is it for my review of For the Cause. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and let me know what you thought of the episode. And subscribe. And if you really would like to support the channel, you could possibly do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description below. I have different rewards for different tiers, such as pre-releases. You can leave comments. I got a series of Patreon only videos where I revisit reviews I've already made exclusively for my Patreon supporters. So, let's see what's coming up next on the old channel here. So, Monday I'll be over on Patreon doing one of those Patreon exclusive videos revisiting my review for Tuvix, where I will rip this episode to shreds once again. And then on Thursday, doing my revisited for the DS9 episode To the Death. And then on Saturday, back here in my main channel for another new review, reviewing the episode Resolutions. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager and many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.